Amaru, Peru, April 15, 2013. It was exactly 3:37 a.m. when Mateo Quispe's screams echoed through the family home on San Jose Avenue. The 4-year-old boy awoke drenched in sweat, his cries echoing with indescribable terror, chilling his parents to the bone. The fur-clad ones threw me to the ground. The temple stones dripped blood like tears. Mateo's mother, Elena Quispe, rushed desperately to her son's room. What she found astonished her. The child sat up in bed, his eyes vacant, speaking in a voice unlike that of a child. "They killed me for telling the truth about the gods. I was the guardian of the secrets of the sacred mountain." But this was only the beginning of something that would irrevocably change the family's life. The child's father, Carlos Quispe, a local mechanic, tried to calm his son. But Mateo continued to talk about impossible places. The house of the Sun Maidens, the temple where gold melts in the rising sun, the staircase to the spirits. Detailed information about Machu Picchu that a 4-year-old shouldn't know. In the days that follow, the nightmares recur, always at the same time, always with the same terrifying words. Elena records everything in a diary, unaware that she's recording what experts would consider the most disturbing evidence of reincarnation ever documented in Peru. You are about to encounter an epic that will challenge every understanding we hold of life, death, and consciousness. A story of a 4-year-old child uncovering archaeological secrets only confirmed years later. Prepare for the most impossible journey ever told on Peruvian soil. 3 days after the events of the first night, the Quispe family sits down for breakfast. Everything seems normal until Mateo, playing with his toys, says a sentence that changes everything. "Mom, I want to go to my house in the mountains. I lived there before." Elena drops her coffee cup. Carlos freezes. How could a 4-year-old boy, born and raised in Arequipa, talk about a house in the mountains he'd never visited before? But what followed baffled them. Mateo began to recount details about Machu Picchu, details not even found in tourist guides, with chilling clarity. He spoke of the 72 windows of the main temple, the reflecting pool that only filled when it rained during the flowering season, and the 13 steps leading down to the Condor Cave. "My golden altar was there," the boy said, drawing strange symbols in the air. "Priests would come and ask me about the sun's messages. I knew when it would rain, when the ground would tremble." His mother recorded every word. His father, incredulous, decided to investigate. He went to the municipal library and confirmed the impossible. Many of the details his son described perfectly matched the latest archaeological findings of the Inca city. But there was something even more disturbing. Mateo talks about places in Machu Picchu that aren't open to the public: secret rooms, underground passages, hidden altars known only to archaeologists working in the restricted area. "I was important there," the boy repeats with chilling seriousness. "Everyone listened to me until the fur-clad men silenced me. Because I knew so much." Elena shudders. How could her 4-year-old son know about archaeological secrets only revealed by recent scientific research? What the family didn't know was that this was just the tip of the iceberg of a story that would overturn everything they thought they knew about reality. 2 weeks later, Elena Quispe makes a decision that will change everything. "If my son says he knows those places, we'll go and check," she tells her husband. The family travels 200 km to Lima to visit the National Museum of Archaeology, Anthropology, and History of Peru. What happens? There shocks everyone. Mateo hasn't even entered the disturbing Inca culture room yet. He heads straight to a display case exhibiting 15th-century ceremonial objects. Without anyone saying a word, he points to a gold vessel and says, "This isn't from Machu Picchu, it's from Ollantao." It has the wrong symbol on it. Dr. Ricardo Espinoza, an archaeologist with 25 years of experience, approaches curiously as a museum guide. The plaque on the object does indeed state its origin: Machu Picchu, 15th century. But when he checks the digital archives, he discovers something chilling. The object had only been reclassified 3 months prior. It originally came from Ollano and had been miscatalogued for decades, but this is just the beginning. Mateo stands before a replica of the Intihuatana, the sacred stone of Machu Picchu. With the certainty of an expert, he says, "This is wrong. The real stone has a crack here." He points to a specific spot on its base. The blood of the last victim fell there. Dr. Espinoza is stunned. Information about that particular crack is known only to archaeologists who have worked directly at Machu Picchu. It has never been published in any book or publicly available document. Elena records everything on her phone. Her son, 4 years old, is correcting professionals, pointing out errors in museum exhibits, and revealing details known only to the most advanced experts. Where does he know all this? Dr. Espinoza asks the parents. Elena replies with tears in her eyes. He says he lived there in another life. The archaeologist is silent for several long seconds. Finally, he says something he never thought he would say in his career. "We need to take this child to Cusco." 3 months after the incident at the museum, Mateo's obsession with Machu Picchu becomes uncontrollable. The child spends hours drawing detailed maps of the fortress, making replicas with stones from the courtyard, and, most disturbingly, begins speaking in a language his parents don't recognize. Elena records their conversations that night. Sleeping, Mateo whispers strange words, "Intita kai pachapakani, mamakilla, alin kausai." When they consult a professor of indigenous languages at San Agustin University, the answer they receive baffles them. This is an ancient Quechua dialect spoken during the Inca Empire. Elena explains to the teacher, "My son never learned Quechua. We were born in Arequipa. We've spoken Spanish our whole lives." Things become unbearable when Mateo begins refusing to eat, saying the food doesn't resemble the sacred mountain's food. He draws plants he says he grew in his own garden. He describes the dawn ceremonies where the temple's gold dances in the first light of the sun. Initially skeptical, Carlos makes the most important decision of his life, to use the family's savings to travel to Cusco. He tells his wife, "If this will help our son, it's worth it." The bus journey from Arequipa to Cusco takes 10 hours. Throughout the journey, Mateo remains silent, gazing out the window, as if he knows every mountain, every valley, every bend in the road. But as the bus approaches the imperial city and the sacred mountains appear on the horizon, something happens that no camera can fully capture. Mateo bursts into tears. This is not the crying of a child. It is the deep, heart-wrenching cry of someone returning home after centuries of absence, a cry born of fear. "I'm here," he whispers through tears. "Father, son, I'm home." Elena embraces her son, not fully understanding what she's witnessing. But one thing is certain, the real test is just beginning. On July 6, 2013, at 5:35 a.m., the first train to Aguas Calientes departs from San Pedro Station in Cusco, carrying the Quispe family toward the moment that will change their lives forever. For the hour-and-a-half journey, Mateo remains glued to the window, pointing to specific locations in the sacred valley. "That's where the women who wove for the Incas lived," he says, pointing to Alanta and Tambo. "That's also where they hid the gold," he notes, glancing at the distant ruins of Pisac. Each pointer is perfectly accurate according to official archaeological information, but nothing prepares them for what awaits them when they set foot in Machu Picchu. Until that moment, Mateo, a normal 4-year-old, was completely transformed years later. He walked with chilling self-confidence, heading towards specific areas, as if he had spent his entire life there. Instead of following the usual tourist route, the child led his family along an alternative path unknown to most visitors. He took them directly to the area known as the Sacred Rock, a ceremonial altar located in the northern part of the fortress. Elena filmed every step. Carlos walked silently, still trying to comprehend the impossible. Then Mateo suddenly stopped in front of a cliff overlooking the Urubamba River 400 meters below. His face changed completely. His eyes filled with horror, as if reliving a traumatic event. "I died there," he said in a voice unlike that of a 4-year-old. "The feathered men brought me here at dawn. They said I had betrayed the gods because I foresaw the coming of the white men from the Great Salt Lake." With military precision, he pointed to a specific rock formation. "They made me kneel there. They cut me here." He touched his neck. "And then they threw me into the abyss so that the vultures would cleanse my soul." Elena stopped the recording. His hands tremble uncontrollably. Mateo stares into the abyss and whispers something that chills his parents to the bone. "But my soul never left. I waited 500 years to return and tell the truth." Following the traumatic revelation at the edge of the cliff, the Quispe family spends the night in the small hotel in Aguas Calientes, utterly shaken. But at the exact same time as the nightmares in Arequipa, at 3:42 a.m., Mateo awakens with a specific mission. "Father, we must return tomorrow. I must show you where my sacred tablet is buried," the boy says, with a clarity that horrifies his parents. "If you don't find it, no one will believe I'm Amaru." For the first time, Mateo reveals his name from a past life, Amaru. The next day, the boy takes his parents to a seemingly ordinary area of the archaeological complex near the Temple of the Sun. He walks exactly 127 steps from the temple's main entrance. He stops and points to a spot on the ground. "Here is my tablet," he declares, 3 meters underground, wrapped in red cloth. "I hid it before they caught me because I knew they would come to get me." Elena notes every detail. Carlos measures the distance with his steps. Indeed, it is exactly 127 meters southeast of the Temple of the Sun, forming a 45-degree angle with the main wall. There's also a gold necklace with 21 turquoise beads and a small container with the sacred coca ashes I prepared for my final ritual, Mateo adds. But here comes the most disturbing part. The boy draws a complete map of what is buried in the damp earth, noting the depths, materials, and the relative positions of each object. The coordinates are so precise they look like the work of a professional archaeologist, not a 4-year-old. When archaeologists come here, Mateo says definitively, they will find exactly what I told them and understand that Amaru really exists. Carlos photographs everything, the measurements, the drawings, the exact coordinates. Unbeknownst to him, he was documenting what would become the most accurate archaeological prophecy ever recorded. The question that made the parents' blood boil was simple. What if they really found something? October 18, 2013. 2 months and 11 days after Mateo's descriptions at Machu Picchu, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Ricardo Espinoza, the same archaeologist who met the child at the Lima National Museum, received official permission to conduct an exploratory excavation at the coordinates Mateo had indicated. The permission came after Espinoza presented the case to the Ministry of Culture as an archaeological verification study based on traditional oral testimonies. Officially, there was no mention that the coordinates came from a 4-year-old child who claimed to be the reincarnation of an Inca priest. The excavation began at 6:30 a.m. The team included Dr. Espinoza, 2 assistant archaeologists, a cartographer, and Dr. Carmen Joza, an expert in the preservation of pre-Columbian textiles. At a depth of exactly 2.87 meters, 13 centimeters less than Mateo had estimated at 3 meters, Dr. Espinoza's shovel struck something hard. "Stop!" he shouted. "There's something here." What they unearthed plunged the entire team into absolute silence. As the child had described, they found a ceremonial plaque, 18 km long and 12 km wide, made of 23-karat pure gold, wrapped in perfectly preserved red cloth. But this was just the beginning. 40 km away from the plaque, they found the necklace. Not 21 turquoise beads, as Mateo had said, but 22. This small error, paradoxically, makes the prediction even more believable. If it were a fabrication, it would be true. The small vessel is found where the child said it was. Inside, according to later analyses, are indeed biological deposits corresponding to ceremonially burned coca leaves. But the truly shocking discovery emerged after examinations of the gold plate. Engravings on its surface depicted astronomical divination ceremonies, rituals of communicating with ancestors, and, most chillingly, scenes of ritual sacrifices performed in the very area of the cliff where Mateo said he was killed. Carbon-14 dating confirmed that all the objects dated to the 15th century, the period of the Inca Empire that Mateo mentioned. Dr. Espinoza made the most difficult decision of his career. He immediately called Elena Quispe. "Miss Quispe, I urgently request that you come to Lima and bring Mateo." Dr. Espinoza's voice on the phone trembled in a way Elena had never heard before. "We found everything exactly where your son said it was." 3 days later, in the archaeology laboratory at the National University of San Marcos, something happened that no scientific camera in Peruvian history had ever recorded. Mateo entered the lab and for the first time saw the objects he had predicted. His reaction astonished everyone present. He showed no surprise, asked no questions, approached the gold plate as if it were a familiar object he had temporarily lost. "This is me," he said calmly. "Here I have engraved the prophecy of the white men coming from the Great Salt Lake." Dr. Espinoza switched on a professional recording device. What he was about to record would forever change his understanding of reality. Mateo began to speak with chilling precision about the carvings on the plate. He described every symbol, every figure, every ceremonial detail, as if he had created it himself. But most disturbing was that he spoke in ancient Quechua, the same dialect he used in his nightmares. Dr. Carmen Josa, a specialist in pre-Columbian languages, simultaneously translated Amaru, guardian of the secrets of Inti, foretell the arrival of the bearded men of cold metal. They will bring about the destruction of the Golden Age, but also the seed of a new dawn. But here begins the most chilling truth. Mateo takes the container of coca ash and brings it close to his face. He takes a deep breath, and his eyes change completely. For a moment, he ceases to be a 4-year-old child and transforms into something older, wiser, deeper. "I knew I would return," he says with a foreign tone in his throat. "I knew my soul would return in the time of flying machines and talking mirrors. I returned to warn you about what was to come." The recording reveals something none of those present noticed at the time: a second, deeper, older voice speaking simultaneously with Mateo, entirely in Quechua. Elena's hair stands on end when she listens to the recording days later. Her 4-year-old son and the spirit of a 500-year-old priest were speaking at the same time. Dr. Espinoza knew he needed more than archaeological artifacts to corroborate this impossible story. He needed historical records. What he discovered in the colonial archives of Cusco left him speechless with shock for 3 days. In the 1,553 documents of the Spanish historian Pedro Cieza de Leon, he found a specific reference that chilled him to the bone. A priest named Amaru had been accused of heresy and executed at the Pichu fortress for foretelling the arrival of bearded men from the sea. The Inca nobles considered him dangerous because of his prophecies. But there's more. Much more. In the General Archives of the Indies in Seville, Spain, a document from 1547 states the heretic Amaru of Pichu was thrown into the sacred abyss after refusing to renounce his prophecies about the destruction of the empire. His followers claim that Tontinuyo will return when he needs a new awakening. Dr. Espinoza contacted Dr. Miguel Cornejo, a historian specializing in colonial history at the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru. When he presented him with the evidence objects, records, historical documents, the academic's response horrified him. "Ricardo, this priest Amaru really did live," Dr. Cornejo confirmed after 2 weeks of research. But there was something even more disturbing. The documents showed that the child was executed at dawn following a ceremonial trial on the northern cliff of Machu Picchu in the very place he described. According to colonial records, the execution date was April 15, 1535, exactly 478 years before the first nightmares began. Mateo's nightmares, however, began on March 15, 2013. The documents also reveal chilling details about Amaru's prophecies, flying machines like metal condors, mirrors showing people in the distance, and a time when children would speak with the voices of their ancestors. She had mentioned it. But the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Cornejo found a letter in the Vatican archives, dated 1548, from the Bishop of Cusco to the Pope. The letter recounts the blasphemous prophecies of the heretic Amaru, stating that with the world transitioning into a new millennium, the spirits of the Incas would return in the bodies of hybrid children. When Elena received the news over the phone, it trembled so much it almost dropped. Her 4-year-old son had not only predicted where the archaeological artifacts would be found, but had also returned to the time prophesied by a 500-year-old Inca priest. The cycle was closing in the most improbable way ever documented. Today, 13 years after his first nightmare, Mateo Quispe is 17 years old and living a seemingly normal life in Arequipa. He studies civil engineering, plays soccer with his friends, and has a typical teenage relationship. But every April 15, the anniversary of his first nightmare and Amaru's death, something extraordinary continues to happen. Elena has gathered all the recordings, audio recordings, photographs, and archaeological evidence. She keeps records of reports and historical documents. What began as a worried mother's diary has become the most complete archive of documented evidence of reincarnation in Latin America. Dr. Espinoza, now director of the Department of Andean Archaeology at the National University of San Marcos, has included Mateo's case in 3 international scientific publications. Although she never explicitly uses the word reincarnation, her articles on ancestral knowledge passed down through unusual means have caused intense debate at universities around the world. But the story doesn't end with Mateo. Since 2015, similar cases have emerged in different regions of Peru. Children from Andean communities speaking the Quechua language are accurately identifying archaeological sites they have never visited. The National Institute for Educational Research and Dissemination has formally documented 23 cases in the last 8 years. Carmen Joza, who specializes in the study of these phenomena, has created a research protocol that includes records in the ancient Quechua language, linguistic analysis, and archaeological verification. In her latest work, she says, "We are faced with a phenomenon that questions the West's concepts of memory and consciousness." Mateo visited Machu Picchu for the last time in June 2022. This time, it was part of a farewell trip to this place that held traces of his childhood. Park officials reported something inexplicable. During the 40 minutes Amaru remained on the cliff where he was executed, no condors flew over the area. This was unprecedented in the ornithological records of the sacred site. When asked about his memories of past lives, Mateo responds with the wisdom of someone much older. "I don't need to remember everything anymore. I have fulfilled my purpose. Death is not the end, and souls return when they have unfinished tasks." So, what was the actual task of Amaru's soul? So, what other secrets from the past are waiting to return through new generations? The answer to these questions may lie in the next child who wakes up screaming one night in March, talking about impossible places and lives they shouldn't remember. Because if Mateo Quispe's story taught us anything, it is that there are secrets in this world that the scientific world has yet to explain, but about which the truth persistently reveals itself.